What's my name?
Jon Snow?
And why is my surname Snow?
Because you're a bastard from the north.
Love is the death of duty. In every man's life, there comes a day when he must choose.
I did what I thought was right. And I got murdered for it.
Kill the boy, Jon Snow, and let the man be born.
Welcome back, everyone. HBO just announced a Jon Snow Game of Thrones sequel series, so I'll explain what's going on because you haven't just stepped into a time machine, but this is basically their best chance to correct a lot of the issues with Game of Thrones Season 8 that people had. So for those of you posting all the memes about them reshooting Game of Thrones Season 8, this is kind of their way of doing something similar. Of course, I'll be doing episode videos for it when it releases, so be sure to subscribe to get everything. This history book, it's about the huge Targaryen civil war called the Dance of the Dragons, when there were tons of dragons all over Westeros. The Jon Snow Game of Thrones sequel series will take place after the events of Game of Thrones Season 8, after Jon Snow left to go north of the Wall with the Wildlings, Tormund, and Ghost. So as of right now, them announcing that this Jon Snow sequel is actually happening with Kit Harington, there are many Game of Thrones spin-off sequels and prequel shows they're doing, but only some of those will wind up actually turning into episodes that we'll actually be able to watch on television. House of the Dragon is just the first one that's made it to actual episodes that we'll be able to watch soon. I will explain all the other shows that they're working on later in the video, and I know a lot of you are also asking if this affects Kit Harington playing the Black Knight for Marvel inside the Eternals movies, inside Midnight Suns, and any other big crossovers with Avengers 5. I will address that later in the video too. The big thing that I think a lot of people are confused about is that Dan and Dave are not involved with any Game of Thrones anything anymore. So just because HBO is doing a sequel doesn't mean that Dan and Dave are coming back. If you did not like what they did with the show, especially towards the last couple of seasons, don't worry, they are not involved with anything creatively or anything like that. One of the big things that they didn't do from the books that they could always introduce during the show, one new twist for this character, is the idea of his wolf dreams and being a warg. In the books, all the Stark children who still have direwolves that continue living throughout the series continue to have wolf dreams, which is a version of warging, like they're low-level warging without realizing it. You mostly see this play out through Arya's storyline because she sees visions of Nymeria running around through the woods, feeling like she is Nymeria running around through the woods. So when people make jokes about Jon Snow having a wolf brain, that's what they're talking about, like him actually being a warg. It's just the TV show never bothered to do that. When the original show ended, Kit Harington and the other main cast members were kind of iffy about coming back as their characters because everybody did ask them, are you all coming back for sequels? And they're like, well, we don't know. Right after Season 8 finished, the only one who was like, definitely I will come back, was Maisie Williams, coming back as a version of Arya. She actually just filmed new scenes as Arya for Warner Brothers as part of their big multiverses game. That's not meant to be canon to A Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones. That's like a completely separate game based on all the IP that Warner Brothers owns. So that's how you have Arya from Game of Thrones interacting with DC comic book characters. This Game of Thrones sequel series is legit Kit Harington coming back as Jon Snow after the events of Season 8 to just continue the story for at least his character. Now, they haven't been totally clear on exactly how much they're going to cover in the show. Like, is this going to be a Better Call Saul kind of sequel series, even though that's meant to be a prequel? Like, will it just focus on a specific group of characters and have cameos from people from the original show? Or will it be the Breaking Bad movie where it's more of a one-off mini-series kind of thing set after the events of the previous story? But I did a bunch of videos after the Season 8 finale aired for all the deleted scenes and these alternate endings, alternate storylines that they cut from the finale, so I'll link that below in the comments and at the end of this so you can learn about everything that would have happened. But the Game of Thrones sequel series will take place a little while after Jon Snow went north past the Wall. The big thing in the kingdom right now is that the Wildlings with Jon Snow Ghost have gone back beyond the Wall, and even though they've defeated the Night King and therefore killed all the White Walkers, the Whites that they raised, there's no more need for the actual wall, like it serves no actual purpose anymore. Originally, it was created 8,000 years ago after the First Long Night with the combined help of Bran the Builder, who at the time was King of the North. He was the Stark's ancestor. He wasn't secretly the three-eyed raven version of Bran, time-traveling with his powers. There were all kinds of crazy theories about that. Bran the Builder was meant to be a completely different character that was an ancestor to these modern-day characters who Bran and all of his predecessors with the same name were named for. He built the wall with the combined help of the Children of the Forest and the Giants at that time, and the Children of the Forest were the ones who created the special magical enchantments on the wall that prevented the White Walkers and the Night King from passing through it. The exception to that during Game of Thrones Season 1, because there is a big twist with Whites in Castle Black, is that they could carry the bodies that had been turned into Whites past the barrier through the gate of Castle Black themselves, and then they reanimated once they were past the wall. But before the Night King had turned Viserion into the Dragon White, he didn't have enough power to bring down the wall or get past the enchantments. On the show, the big difference is they condensed the timeline, so instead of the Long Night being like many thousands of years ago, it was closer to being 1,000 years ago. Still a long time, but not nearly as long. Eventually, hundreds of years later, what wound up happening is that people in the Seven Kingdoms just forgot what the wall was about. They forgot about the threat of the White Walkers, and they started to believe that the wall had been created to keep the free folk away from the Seven Kingdoms. But now in present day, three-eyed Raven Bran has become king of the Seven Kingdoms. Samwell is his Grand Maester. Tyrion is his hand of the king. The way they portrayed things is the realm has been to be kind of torn on what he did, killing Daenerys. Like, some of the realm supported Jon Snow, and some of them supported Daenerys. But even though Jon Snow still technically has a claim to the Iron Throne, the Great Council that they formed in this finale scene basically chose Bran to be their new king. So the realm supports Bran as king. But after the fact, after this all plays out, he's portrayed as kind of a controversial figure of legend amongst people in the Seven Kingdoms. But everybody pretty much knows that he went north of the wall, and outside of his sister Sansa, who's ruling over Winterfell in the north, really close by, no one else is really worried about Jon Snow that much. Like, no one's really thinking about what's going on with the wildlings, because they're not even that large of a group. And even Bran, who you think would be concerned about his brother, Jon Snow, is more like a human turnip, like a repository for all of history, so his personality is more like a AI. He just spits out facts and details about things from across history anytime you try to talk to him. And Arya has still left Westeros to go to the western continent on the other side of the Sunset Sea to just explore what's west of Westeros. Gendry is now Lord of the Stormlands, and if it wasn't clear, obviously Jon Snow is leading the free folk. Tormund is kind of like his second in command. But a lot of you are asking, who's going to be the main villain of this show if it's going to be centered on Jon Snow? Like, what's the central conflict? If they defeated the Night King, the White Walkers, all the Whites, the undead minions, and the animals they raised? Well, they haven't said if this is only going to take place up in the north beyond the wall, or if it'll be like a big sprawling political thriller the way the first show was. And a lot of the villain will just depend on the geography of the show, like where it actually takes place. If it's localized to just north of the wall, it's going to be very different. But like now in present day, because there's no more Night King, there are no more spiders big as hounds. There are still a couple groups in the world of Essos that hate the Seven Kingdoms in general and hate Jon Snow for killing Daenerys. So like, he's still hated by a lot of people around the world. And there's further internal conflict, civil war, brewing between different kingdoms inside Westeros. Like, just because they beat the Night King, beat Cersei, everyone went home, doesn't mean that everyone in Westeros and Essos now love each other. One of the big themes in George R. R. Martin's The Song of Ice and Fire series is that time plays out in a circular nature, like events always have a way of repeating themselves, people always make the same types of mistakes. They haven't confirmed everybody that's coming back for the show, like Sophie Turner would probably come back because Winterfell is right there next door, south of the wall. It would be weird for them to do this whole ass show about Jon Snow for 5 seasons and to not show you what's happening at Winterfell or any of the other Seven Kingdoms. So I believe, Better Call Saul style, they will try to feature people from the original cast. The biggest antagonists left alive at the end of the main show were the forces of Slaver's Bay, the Iron Bank, who really wants their money back now. They lost a ton of money to Cersei after giving her even more loans that she had initially paid back during Season 7, like she paid back the first loan using the Tyrell's gold that they had stolen from the Reach. Right after they paid that loan back with that gold, they gave her another large new loan that she used to hire the Golden Company, which were promptly melted by Cersei and Drogon. They lasted for like 5 seconds during that battle. If you can call it a battle, it was more of a massacre. There's all the forces of the free cities, there's what's left of the Dothraki, the rest of the Unsullied, even though Grey Worm implied at the end of the main show that he was taking the Unsullied, or what remained of them, to Noth, the island where Missandei originally came from in the Summer Isles, and the Dothraki seemed like they were eventually going back to Essos. But there are many forces inside Westeros and inside Essos that want revenge for something that happened during the events of the main show. And there are a lot of other kingdoms that they didn't feature during the main show, like other places in Essos we didn't go or didn't see a lot of. Really good example is the forces of Ashai in the Shadowlands. That's the place where Melisandre originally came from. Because they just announced they started working on this Jon Snow sequel series, they probably wouldn't have episodes ready till at least 2025 if they run it concurrently with the House of the Dragon episodes. Right now, the other shows they're still working on are the Nymeria and the 10,000 Ships set in the past. There's one specifically about Corlys Velaryon the Sea Snake. He's a character that we're going to see during the events of House of the Dragon, but I believe it's meant to be an older version of the character during House of the Dragon. There's a Dunk and Egg series based on the books about those characters. Remember, it's Sir Duncan the Tall, who's the ancestor of Brienne the Tarth, and Egg is really Aegon V, the future king of Westeros. It's also a prequel series, but he's the younger brother of Maester Aemon. That's why when he's dying, he starts speaking about an event that happened with his brother, Egg. Just for reference too, Jon Snow's real name is Aegon. That would make him Aegon VI if he were to take the Iron Throne. There are also a couple different animated Game of Thrones series that they're working on, but we don't know as much about what's going on with the plot of those. And the whole thing with Kit Harington coming back as the Black Knight inside the Marvel Universe is that I believe that's mostly meant to be cameo status right now. I think for a little while people were wondering if they would do a Black Knight series on Disney+. It sounds like they're not doing that now, and he'll just be in future movie crossovers, and that's why he has so much extra time to do this full, big Game of Thrones sequel series. But everyone post all your theories in the comments below. Who do you want to be the villain of this new Jon Snow sequel series? I will do more videos for it when we get more trailers and details. They